This is the landmark action film that not only defined 1980s action films, but spawned 4 sequels and an incalculable number of knockoff impersonators and wannabes. A New York City detective visits his estranged wife in Los Angeles at a company Christmas party in an attempt to reconcile their marriage. But German terrorists blow those plans out the window, or rather windows, while John McClane plays the ultimate game of cat and mouse. Wes, Darling Beat, and special guest Nick Eversman joined the Nakatomi Christmas party to discuss once and for all if this action classic qualifies as a Christmas movie as they review Die Hard on View the Right Thing.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of View the Right Thing. I am Wes, and with me always is Darling Beat. Say hi, Beat.
Hello.
And Beat, did you know that we have a special guest today?
Really?
Yeah, I'm so excited. It is one of my closest friends, the fabulous, the stupendous, the wondrous Nick Eversman. Hi, Nick. How's it going?
Hi, it's going well. That's probably the best introduction I've ever gotten.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing very well, actually. Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite times of year. So
Yeah, it's a good time of year.
yeah, I get to see the family and everything. So
And who, Santa is the best.
absolutely love Santa.
I've always wanted to be Santa.
That's one of my favorite things to do with the kids is get ready for that night.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy Krampus, so...
Yeah, because you're naughty. So, just a little background. I've known Nick for about 12 years now. Mm-hmm. Nick was working. He was an actor on the first feature film I ever got to work on. I worked on shorts and TV stuff, but never had I ever done an actual feature film, like a real feature film. And so it was really, really exciting, and I was kind of in awe of the process. And I was responsible for driving Nick and the other actors to set every day and home. Mm-hmm. I drove like a bat out of hell and scared the shit out of Nick. And it was a really great experience. That movie's called Deep Dark Canyon. If people want to look it up, it's like a cool like throwback to 70s, like gritty men on the run kind of a thing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We shot it all up in Northern California. I was basically attached to another person for about a month, and in a literal sense.
Yeah,
and
your wrists hurt.
Wrist definitely hurt. What's actually interesting too about when we met is we actually, I think one of the first real bonding experiences we had was we watched movies there as well.
I took a projector.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
It was good times.
It
and
was.
then we found out we both were really into Disney, and I remember we went mini golfing, and we found like a really cool thrift store that had like used CDs and DVDs and Disney paraphernalia. And stuff.
Gosh, that's right. And I got a few Disney records from there. Yep.
Good times.
Very good times.
So
are adorable.
Oh, get out of here! Get out of here, you. So tell us about what you kind of have been doing as of late, Mr. Actorman.
Well, let's see. So recently, things have been a little busy. I just finished principal photography on a project called Dear Luke, Love Me, which was the first time I really got to go behind the curtain and do some executive producing on the project and actually started from the ground up with it. So we've been working on that for about 3 years, and we just finished principal photography about a week ago. Before that, in 2019, was The Good Lord Bird with Ethan Hawke on Showtime, which was an absolute blast.
It's incredible too.
It's probably my favorite thing that I've ever done. A Civil War piece and working with horses and an amazing cast, and just the subject material was something that was very important as well. It was kind of a once in a lifetime type experience. And aside from that, just kind of enjoying being a dad at the same time and raising the family. So.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about Good Lord Bird. I mean, the experience of working with just Ethan Hawke alone has got to be. I mean, that's like, in my mind, one of the dream people to work with.
You know, it was pretty amazing getting to work with Ethan. He was so giving, and he was so devoted to the work that he was actually doing, and also when the people around him, when he saw that devotion in them as well, he almost passed the baton to you. You know, he would let you interact in the scene a little bit more, and I really got to know him pretty well personally on a one-on-one level.
Well,
and
you were his son.
Yes, I was his eldest son in the film, or sorry, I shouldn't say film, the series.
Yeah.
It felt like a film. Every one of them was at least an hour when we were actually shooting it, and then we shortened it down a little bit. But yeah, it was kind of a master class in how to approach a role that is, you know, something you're, oh gosh, I don't know how to say it. It's very personal to you, and like how to bring that personal side of how you feel about something, bring it out, but also have it be something that's not too close to you at the same time. So it's, you know, you don't have to rely so heavily on yourself and your own personal feelings, but also diving really deeply into the characters and how to do that. For instance, one of the things was I threw myself into the work with the horses, and I made sure that everything that I did was really in depth and involved. So when we would cut, instead of going back to like the tents and you know, going to get a snack or something like that, I would walk off into the woods. You know, this was a thing that took place during the Civil War times. It's about the raid at Harper's Ferry is where it culminates. So 1850s. And I really kind of just, you know, left myself behind. I brought parts of myself to it, but he was really good at kind of leading that. You know, he really became John Brown, and he had to find his voice, the voice of John Brown, and he really went in depth in learning about John, and he went through different pathways to find John as well. And it was amazing to watch somebody do that, and then also to kind of bring you along for the journey as well. So,
well, and he's so good in everything, but this felt so different from everything else he's done. Like, this was a real, like, he really became, you know, a lot of times it's like Ethan Hawke is finding the truth, like his truth in a character, right? Like, you know, you hear people go, oh, like Kevin Costner, he's always the same and everything. It's like, well, yeah, he's Kevin Costner. He's just finding himself in the characters, and that's what he's portraying on screen. And Ethan Hawke does that a lot. But this felt like, wow, this is a real character. This is something really, really different for him.
I think on some level it was extremely personal to him. I know that he fell in love with the novel, which was written by James McBride, which is absolutely fantastic. And of course he adapted it with James and Mark Richard. And I believe it was him and his wife listened to it or read it together like 6 years prior to us shooting, and he fell in love with it, and it was just about when he talks about it, it was, you know, how do I find a way to get to tell this story? You know, what's the right way to do it? So he really went, it was very personal to him, and you could see that in kind of every single thing that he did. You know, he had some of his close friends working with him as well on it. Like Jason Blum, which was you know, fantastic. And
Beats a big fan. Beats a Blumhouse fan.
A big Blumhouse fan there. Yeah, it was. He's a great guy too. was blessed to get to meet him as well. But that was the thing too, is it really didn't feel a whole lot like work. It felt like a real labor of love. Everyone was just excited and happy to be there and to be telling this story. And it's a hard story to tell, and it's a little bit fictionalized as well as to what happens with John Brown, like historical fiction. It's close, but it's not exactly the true story. But you could just tell from everyone that was really involved with it that it was really deep and meaningful to everyone. And I think Ethan just exudes that, and so I'll say, if you were paying attention, you knew that this was going to be really special.
Yeah.
And for myself, it was, like I said, it was one of those once in a lifetime things. So I was all in from the moment that my feet, hit the ground in Richmond. I was ready to go.
Yeah. So let's real quick just talk about some other things you've done, because I know, so Beat, how you doing, Beat?
I'm good.
She's been so quiet.
I know.
If you have any questions for Nick too, feel free, Beat. Beat's a big horror fan, which is why I was like, oh, Blumhouse.
Sure.
Sure. But
yeah, Sinister with Ethan Hawke is one of my favorite
That's a good
movies. It makes me jump, and it just that feeling.
check out the
I
Sinister
definitely
episode of Do the Right Thing. Already available.
Oh, good plug.
Yeah, but you've done some other things. You've done some other horror movies.
I have done a few horrors. Yes.
One I love, one I own.
Yes.
I actually own both of them, but
that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
So the one I really enjoyed. You took me to the like an LA premiere, like at a film festival for it, and it was Urban Explorer.
Yes.
You did take me to the premiere of the other one too.
I did take you to that one as well.
Let's talk about Urban Explorer first.
Sure, let's talk about Urban Explorer.
I don't know if you've seen Urban Explorer. It's a little bit more obscure. Have you seen that?
I have. I love it. Oh,
Okay.
I love it.
You did see it. Oh, that's right. I was
Yes,
like, you need to
yes.
watch one of Nick's movies.
Yeah. So I was pretty much blackmailed. I was like, he was like, you have to, or I will not talk to you again. So I had to watch it.
And you liked it okay?
Oh yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I believe was really my first real film that I actually got to do. We shot that all entirely in Berlin, in Germany, and it's actually it's directed by a man named Andy Fetcher, who actually just recently had somewhat of a hit on Netflix with Old People. So that's probably his biggest thing, especially recently. But I've heard wonderful things about it. I haven't had a chance to see it, but
Real quick, just so people know, Urban Explorer is about a group of sort of like tourists in Germany who are wanting to quote unquote urban explore and go underneath the city to find old Nazi bunkers.
Right. So we're in search of the Führerbunker, the Fahrerbunker, which in German is essentially the bunker of Hitler's drivers. So not Hitler's bunker, but so we meet this guide, through nefarious ways. We don't really go into it, but he agrees to take us underground in Berlin to find this bunker. And along the way, we meet some other characters who are not so kind to us, and one in particular who was very very good at his job and actually did scare me several times for real. I won't go into it or spoil anything, but what was really fascinating to me about the process was we actually filmed guerrilla style in underground Berlin. We really went into these. We'd be at we'd arrive at a factory, and then you'd have an AD meet you and say, okay, follow me. And he'd give you a flashlight, and we'd go 70 feet maybe underground. It was many floors down. And then we'd walk for another 10, 15 minutes to get to set, we were really in these locations. I have no idea, exactly where we were. That's actually the more frightening thing, is I think they intentionally kept us in the dark about that. There are a few places that I know because they're, subway stations and whatnot, but a lot of it, like, I don't even remember exactly where we were.
You could never get back.
No, we could never get back unless we had a PA with us.
Yeah.
And there were legitimately some times there where we ran into things and it was like, this is almost too good to be like art design or set design or something like that, So it was legitimately frightening. And then also, there were some situations there that were legitimately terrifying because we did do some things that you don't really do in American style cinema, like using, actual weaponry or being perched precariously over a 75-foot shaft, and you're on a wire, but you have to jump from one spot to the next, or you're walking on a ladder, over this thing, and it's all rusted metal that's sharp and jagged edges, and I mean it was legitimately scary at times to work on, but it was also so much fun to just like kind of immerse yourself in it. So I wish I would have seen Berlin a little bit more, above ground. But I think it's pretty darn cool to say that I've actually really been to the undergrounds of Berlin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've done the urban exploration of Berlin, and it's scary. That's a horror film in itself.
So we won't go to. I'm sorry, I just jumped back into it. Pete, did you have any questions for Nick or anything?
No, I just think that's really cool how you guys were underground, and some of that fear and adrenaline must have came through your acting, through everyone's acting, because you guys did a really good job. I love that movie.
So we'll just go over a few titles,
sure,
but not go into them because we can have you on again and we can talk about other experiences.
Sure.
I don't want to spend the whole episode just going over this, but so you were in the other horror film that we were talking about, Hellraiser Revelations.
Yes, Hellraiser Revelations 8, I believe.
It's 8. Hellraiser 8.
I believe it was 8. We did it to keep the rights,
folks. It was a movie. I'm proud of Nick and the work he did on it. It is what it is.
I mean, legitimately, that's what it was. We did it to keep the rights.
Yeah.
For the film. Well, I shouldn't say we. They did it to keep the rights, and it was done quick and dirty, and that's how it came out.
Yep. So you've worked with Gus Van Sant.
Yes.
On When We Rise.
Yep.
You worked with Gandolfini before he died.
Gandolfini, Diane Lane, and Tim Robbins, all
Verite.
in the same movie in Cinema Verite.
That's on HBO. People can watch that. They got an HBO subscription.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty cool little movie.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked on ABC a few times. You've done Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You've done Once Upon a Time, and then he was on a whole season of a show called Missing.
Yes, that was Ashley Judd and Sean Bean. Yeah.
What else was The Duff? A lot of people know The Duff.
Yes,
that one shows up on Netflix top 10 a lot.
Recently we've had a pretty good resurgence. It's kind of interesting for me to just kind of see The Duff and it is popular now. It's interesting because what we really focused on in that film was cyberbullying, and that's something they actually teach in schools now.
Yeah.
So it was that was fun. That was a fun little thing, and it was kind of small when we were doing it, and then it just kind of grew its own legs.
If you haven't seen The Duff, I don't want people to be like, oh, it's a serious movie about. It's a
little Mean Girls.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of movies from the '90s in the vein of She's All That, or
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of in that same vein where it's like the nerdy girl and the hot guy and she's gonna get a makeover and you know like
Montage.
yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
those things, and of course Nick plays this like dreamboat motorcycle heartthrob with a guitar.
I like that. That's an of course.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's just an assumption at this point. But yeah, so and then you were in what, Runaways? You had
The Runaways,
You were in
yes.
The Wild with Reese Witherspoon.
Wild with Reese. Get On Up with
Get On Up.
Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Oh my goodness. And Dan Aykroyd too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should definitely save that for our story. Any of those stories.
Oh
for
sure,
another time.
absolutely.
And then one that when I mention this to people, I'm like, oh yeah, my friend Nick, blah blah blah, and they're like, oh, what's he been in? And the one that I'm gonna out myself here that I've never seen it. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
sure.
But one day I'll watch it. Maybe we'll watch it together. But people seem to really know this movie and have an affection for it. Vampires Suck.
Oh goodness, yeah. I actually forgot for a second. Yes,
That you were in Vampires Suck.
Well, I was going through in my head. I'm like, where's he going with this?
Which,
Yeah.
if people don't know, it's a parody of the Twilight films, and you play the Jasper character, right?
Yes,
The like weird, bug-eyed, fucking weirdo who's always hungry.
what? Yes,
Hey.
he's always hungry. Yeah.
Oh crap about Jasper.
Well, okay. Have you seen Vampires Suck?
Yes, I have.
Well, okay. So then you've seen Nick be Jasper.
Yeah, yeah. Just quick interesting thing about that was, so that was the first of two films that I worked on with Ken Jeong, because he's also in The Duff, and we never had a scene together, but we are like we send each other Christmas cards.
That's cute.
Like we're like close friends, but yeah, never worked together.
It's weird how working on movies can kind of connect people, even if they don't. Like I connected. I mean, obviously on Deep Dark Canyon, I connected with you, and I connected pretty closely with Greg Sipes on that film as well. And so it's just kind of strange how that happens. I'm not an actor. I didn't spend a ton of time with you guys unless it was offset, and even then, it was sort of sporadic, right? It was like maybe on a Saturday or something we'd hang out or something. But
Sure.
But yeah, it's kind of strange how working in the industry sort of just connects you.
Well, I find that when you're on sets, and especially when you're on locations and things like that, you develop a little family for a little bit, and little, it's not a clique or anything like that, but there's little groups that kind of you find something that people enjoy, it's the same thing, or just something that intrigues you and whatnot, and you kind of gravitate towards each other, and to some degree. There is a little bit of wanting to learn from other people,
Sure,
about their story and how they've what their journey is through art and all that. So.
Well, it's interesting you talk about how like people sort of become a family for that short period of time. I always sort of liken it to, and I think this is kind of one of the reasons why the family thing happens. But I always liken shooting a movie to. I'm going to say this, and I'm like, I have to preface it. I am not downplaying military or the war or soldiers or anything, but in a lot of ways, it feels like you're fighting a war. You're constantly just like you're stressed all the time, and you're behind, and everything's expensive, and like people act like people are dying. Like something goes wrong, and people act like it's the end of the world, and so it's just like and obviously it's not like real actual war. There's actually a war going on in Ukraine, and I don't mean any disrespect or anything to anyone, but that's sort of like that mindset you get into, that like you're fighting this battle, and the people around you are also fighting the battle, and when you recognize that in each other, it kind of bonds you in a way.
It is a brothers in arms sort of thing. It's stressful. It's there's usually deadlines that you have to meet, all of that, and you kind of lean on each other for support through it all. And it's there's a lot of camaraderie that comes with it.
People think that that movie making is like all glamorous, right? That is
Hardly.
Yeah.
Really?
And there are moments.
There's moments. There are moments.
But
sure.
you know, again, like going back to Deep Dark Canyon, I remember, you know, we're shooting out in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, you know, we have to carry that equipment into the woods. You know, we've got to. I remember we have on a set, you have what's called the base camp, so that's where the trailer offices typically are, and makeup and stuff like that. And it when you're on location, it moves to wherever you're near your location. So I remember one day a couple of days, our base camp was at an old abandoned amusement park. Do you remember that?
Yes.
They had like an old like tilt-a-whirl like cars just like rusting in the sun, and an old like little roller coaster tracks and stuff.
I think there was a fun house there too.
And the most amazing part about that is one of my favorite things about that is that I had to leave the abandoned amusement park to go pick up Matthew Lillard, who played Shaggy, who is used to going to abandoned amusement parks. So
sure,
it's pretty great memory in my brain. But anyways, let's talk about our first film of the holidays, and we'll talk. We'll go through the notes like normal and stuff, and then we'll kind of talk about the biggest controversy with this film, and that's whether or not this is a Christmas film or not. And we'll get there. I actually have written a thing about it once before, so I'll use this article thing that I wrote with as my guide. So the first question is, Beat, I'm gonna go to you first, because you're the regular and you can teach them how it works. This is your first time actually seeing the whole thing, all, you know, in order. You've only seen clips, so did you enjoy this film?
I did enjoy it. I have a huge crush on Bruce Willis.
On Bruce Willis or John McClane?
Bruce Willis.
Okay, because I have a crush on
Anything
John
he's
McClane.
in.
Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think it was really good. I got that little full like chest feeling at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's always a good sign for me, is when it makes me feel good to have watched something and like full and just complete. So I really enjoyed it.
Great. Nick, how about you? This is your first time seeing it.
This is my first time seeing it. I haven't really even seen clips from it. I really enjoyed it. I did. And I'm a big action movie person, but I get so heavy into critiques when things are just like kind of outside the realm of what's really believable.
Sure.
You know, I have a hard time at times suspending belief, but I am absolutely a sucker for a good action film, and this felt very good.
It has so many good one-liners and stuff in it, and it's very funny.
The one-liners are good. I mean, you know, I there's tons of notes that I have. There's a lot that I was really intrigued with, and not just enjoying what was on screen, but kind of the storytelling of it.
There were a couple of moments where something happened on screen, and I'd see Nick grab his phone to make a note, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, oh, he thinks this is going to be a mistake, I bet he made a note because he's like, oh, why would this happen? And then I was like, they're going to explain it in a little bit. So I'm curious if that's in your notes at all. Or you may have deleted it. I don't know. But I was trying to figure out why you would have picked up your phone for a reason other than that. But maybe we'll be surprised. But yeah, so Beat, let's start with your notes, and we'll just kind of bounce around a little back and forth, and see what we have to say.
Alrighty then. So my first note is just the confidence that John McClane exudes. Beautiful. Getting in the front seat of the limo, just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but he just sits up front with the kid,
Yeah.
the limo kid. I loved it so much, and he was just like, "Yeah, you know everything.
Well, and
You're so smart."
It's such a good like like moment for the audience to understand that he's a normal guy, that he's, you know, like they kind of do that thing where he's like California, like over and over again, you know, and they do it right off the bat. Like he's skeptical of the guy telling him about the foot thing, which is like a genius moment in storytelling. But and then he sees the girl like run up and jump on her boyfriend by the baggage claim, and he's like, California. And so like they sort of like set up this idea that he's definitely a fish out of water, and he's sort of like an everyman, but then he sits in the front seat of the limo, which is like, yeah, he's not subscribing to this like hoity-toity California thing. He's,
you know, that was actually something that I saw a little bit differently, Beat, was that I didn't necessarily see the confidence right away, because the first shot is him kind of gripping the chair and looking uncomfortable. And yeah, then it goes into, well, I've been doing this for this long, and you know, it kind of becomes a game. And then in the next scene, he talks about how long, you know, the driver's been doing it and all that.
Well, and you know, I commented on this when we were watching it, that he has a gun on the plane. Yes. And he smokes inside the airport.
Right.
And he lit up a cigarette in the limo without even asking, like, is it cool if I smoke? Like, what a different time that we lived in back then.
Goodness, yeah.
All right, so what else you got, Beat?
I felt like the first dude that he fought looked like a buff Russian Dahmer.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I can see that. So
See, that was my note.
Carl's brother, whatever his name was.
Yes, Carl's brother.
Not Franz. I don't remember.
Something German.
Some German name.
Something German.
I knew. I looked over at Nick when they started speaking German, and Nick had a big grin on his face.
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, the guy was going links, rechts, links, and so I look over at Nick.
Right, left.
Okay, Nick, do you have any early notes? Early film notes?
Well, I guess I don't know if we've gotten into that yet, but yeah, one of the things that surprised me, was when we do see the picture of John for the first time. Mm-hmm. He kind of towers over the family in that photo. Mm-hmm. He's much higher than the.
There's a hierarchy.
The rest of, yeah, there's a little bit of a hierarchy.
It's a really good point, because one of the things that John is struggling with in the film is this idea that his wife has superseded his role in the household, that like she's like the vice president of this company, and she basically has taken the breadwinner role from him. And you know, I think especially in this era, he's like a tough New York cop, you know, no nonsense. And I think that's one of the things that's difficult for him, is to like sort of allow her to have the autonomy to be the leader of the house in some ways. Mm-hmm. So he's sort of fighting that.
Sure.
So it's a good observation.
Another thing that I noticed actually during that bit, and it continued through, was actually stylistically. So it's you know, it's sundown, it's sunset. There's blinds on everything, mm-hmm. and there's blinds on everything, not just the windows outside, but the windows inside too. And it almost gave me a feeling of like bars, you know, and like, of course, when the gates come down, there's bars. And so like, that's like a prison almost, you know, it becomes its own prison. But then when you get to a different floor, when you go up to the unfinished levels, everything is wide open. It's wide open. There's no blinds on the windows. There's no walls really. Yeah. So it was completely different feeling of people being trapped, and then people being wide in the open.
Yeah, that's a good observation too. Ooh, he's a smart one, folks. Mm-hmm. We brought a good one here. B, you got another one for me?
Yeah, I liked the elevator scene. When John was on top of it and it started going up, it gave me Mission Impossible vibes.
Oh, yeah, I worried about like Emilio Estevez.
Mm-hmm. I thought Emilio.
Anxiety.
So Bruce Willis actually was riding an elevator for those scenes. They really did that for real.
Really?
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff in this movie for real.
There was a lot that I wrote down that looked practical.
Yeah, there's a lot of practical effects. There was some model stuff, and they did some things where they married a model with the actual shots with a pan, and they were like, oh, we're gonna have to paint this so that way it's seamless. But when they did it, it turned out to not need any additional effects to it, so just like luck. So so we can talk a little bit more about that, because there's a really great little factoid about some of the explosions. But I want to bring up one that I asked you to make a note, Beat. The vehicle that was the truck that was driving, I said, can you make a note of the name? Do you remember what it was?
Yes. Pacific Carrier.
Courier, yeah.
Courier.
So did that seem familiar to you at all?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Did this movie visually, like sort of the way it was shot and composed and stuff, did it remind you of anything? And it's okay if it didn't, but did it remind you of anything?
No.
So the director of this movie is John McTiernan. The director of photography is Jan de Bont. Jan de Bont, Beat, back in the beginning of November, we did an episode called Speed, and he was the director of Speed. And Pacific Courier is the airplane that the bus drives into and explodes.
Oh my goodness. That is ridiculous.
So I believe then Speed takes place in the Die Hard universe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So also sort of about a cop who's being terrorized by a terrorist who wants to blow stuff up, and definitely gets in over his head, and kind of trapped in primarily one location for most of the movie. So got some similarities there as well. So, but yeah, especially at the beginning of the film, when they're showing they show the building for the first time and a lot of the sunset and some of the LA stuff. It's got a real Speed vibe to it. Well, Speed had a real Die Hard vibe for some of those shots. So, so that's
pretty fancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to make note of that. What else you got, Beat?
Falling in the little shaft with holding a gun strap.
Yeah.
You told me to make a note.
Yeah. So fun thing. So that one was not Bruce Willis doing the elevator shaft stunt. He was supposed to catch the ledge, and the stuntman missed the ledge and fell a little further and caught one a little further down, and so they worked it into the story.
Really?
Yeah.
No, wait. Okay, just now I have to back up. That was actually an elevator shaft.
I don't know how far down it went. I don't know what kind of wire they had him on.
Okay.
So I can't tell you that.
Sure.
I don't know if they built that specifically or if that was... So this building is, for people that are not in LA, this is the 20th Century Fox headquarters. And Fox notoriously charged themselves rent to shoot this film.
Oh, goodness.
And they were only allowed to do certain things at certain times of the night, like the helicopter stuff. They were only able to shoot for like a 2-hour window, so they had to come back multiple nights to do that stuff. And blowing stuff up, obviously they had to do it at specific times. But so the 20th Century Fox building was new, and a bunch of the floors hadn't been designated for use yet, and that's why you see a lot of unfinished floors, is because they had all these empty floors that weren't being used. So so it may have been an elevator shaft. They may have been 3 floors up, if that's the case. It may have been something that they created on a soundstage somewhere else. I don't know. But him missing the ledge and then catching one further down was an actual mistake that they left in the film.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, go ahead.
It felt plausible, like it could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Nick. What you got?
Well, I mean, I had a few that were a little bit backwards.
Sure, yeah, we'll go back.
Well, so just I guess so one thing that just a little thing that stuck out to me, and I don't know if you guys caught it. So when the shooting starts, like when the first shot happens in the I forget the character's name when he's shot. Oh no! It actually is just the shooting.
Akagi, or just the shooting in the.
I think it's just the first time that
they just come in and yeah, sure.
First time the gun is fired, the camera is kind of wide, and there's a painting, and the painting looks like shattered glass.
Sure. Yeah.
Which I thought was just a really cool thing to do. But the other thing was, so during the whole negotiation, he had a silencer. Hans had a silencer on, and he chose to take it off.
He didn't need it anymore, right?
We didn't need it anymore, but it was also he's making a statement, that like I'm in total control of everything. Everybody can hear what's going on.
Everything Hans does is calculated, and I think the more important thing was he wants the people in the other room to hear. Yeah,
that was actually another one that I had was the none of the henchmen to me show any control. Like that was a big theme that I caught, and I guess is a little bit further ahead.
Sure.
Is that being patient keeps you alive.
Sure.
Pretty much every character in this that aired on patience and didn't get ahead of themselves in that moment, at the very least, they survived that moment.
Yeah.
But if you jumped the gun, I mean, not
literally,
pardon the pun. Yeah, exactly. You'd make it out. And yeah, all the henchmen seemed to be really quick with their movements and everything, and he was totally in control until that moment, the first time that he's wrong. And I forget exactly what it is.
That Hans is wrong?
Yeah, there's like one moment where he's wrong about something, and his face completely changes, and he loses control.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when it was. I think it's right around when... Oh, it's when he's talking to McClane for the first time. And he says... Oh, he calls him a security guard. He goes, and his face just drops.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, it looks like the blood goes out of him because he suddenly is not fully in control here.
Well, and there's another thing with that where... not just that he's wrong. I think that greatly bothers the character. But also that he expects everyone to be afraid of him, and John is anything but afraid of this guy.
Yeah.
Just from the moment they see, like, now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho. It's like this is not. And to the writers and the director's credit, he's not super cop, and that was a thing that they really wanted to do. Is they wanted to say this isn't like a guy who's just going to run in and just blow everything up and win and save the day. This is a flawed guy who is sort of an everyman, but he's also like kind of a sarcastic asshole.
Yeah, I mean he had moments where when he's up in the shaft and he's pressing the gun up. Look, he has his gun pointed back down at the German who's looking up at him. Yeah, the one who's looking up at him. But there's other people there too. So if he shoots, it's game over.
Yeah,
and instead he's lucky. He's not super cop. He has some luck on his side there.
Yeah, and to your point, I think he plays it smart. He tries to do fairly safe things. He chooses very specific floors. Mm-hmm. He waited for when he leaves Holly's office at the beginning and he escapes to the stairwell. He waits for the moment, Right. Same thing with same thing with the glass, like he chooses his moment and he doesn't take the detonators with him because it's just going to slow him down. So,
right.
And Hans is really similar where he's like really, really patient.
I mean, he's sitting there eating at one point.
Yeah.
When he's talking to all the hostages, he's just eating. He doesn't really have any worries, and things have already happened at that point, and he's still like, "Well, I got this."
He has a plan, right? And as long as he can stick to the timeline, then he's good. Since you're talking about eating, I just want to point out the moment where they bring Ellis Coke,
yes,
a Coca-Cola,
yes,
and it's really clear that he wants cocaine. But they brought him a Coca-Cola because
right,
they don't understand what he's asking for.
Give me Coke. Yeah. Oh boy.
Okay. Go ahead. One of you. Pick your poison.
Well, okay. I'll say again an attention to detail. One thing that stuck out to me. All the Germans. Those are German weapons.
Mm-hmm.
The Steyr AUG and the MP5. Those are German weaponry with Germans, so I thought that was just nice detail.
Well, since you bring up the weapons, there's kind of an interesting thing with those. One of the things, John. So when you are, and you know this, when you're on a set, the guns are modified to fire specific types of blanks, and they're generally like quarter loads, half loads, and so on.
Yes.
That will determine how loud it is, what the muzzle flash is like, and so on.
Yeah.
John McTiernan, the director, really, really wanted really big muzzle flashes.
Ooh.
So they used, they created their own blanks for this. And because of the blanks were different, they had to remodify the guns as well. So that way they could have these really loud, like, big muzzle flash things. Because he wanted to really be able to see the muzzle flash. So nowadays they would just CG the muzzle flashes, right? But
you put that in post, yeah.
which is terrible. It looks bad every time. Don't do that, filmmakers.
I have to imagine that was a loud set, though. I mean,
so Beat, I had you make a note about the boardroom table.
Aye.
So I guess I could talk about that. So there's the scene where John's under the table and the guy's shooting at him. And he's like, "You've run out of table, haha!" And then John, like, thanks for the advice, and like kills him, right?
yeah.
So Bruce Willis, after this film, had to wear a hearing aid. He's to this day wears a hearing aid. He lost about 2/3 of his hearing. They used, between the wood and the plexi that they used for safety, it and the gun being so loud, it killed like 2/3 of his hearing, and like I think his left ear.
Yeah, I mean that, and I'll just say from myself doing Deep Dark Canyon, we shot probably about upwards of 400, I would say, like, shots.
Yeah.
And those are like half loads, quarter loads, and I mean I would wear earplugs every single time, and my ears still hurt. So I can't imagine being that close to, you're, because they were actually in the skyscraper. It sounds like for some of that, the reverberation and the pressure on the ears. Yeah, I would have to imagine there was some damage done.
Yeah, I remember on Deep Dark Canyon. So one of my tasks before we went to the shoot was to go and pick up some of the weapons, and the guy who provided one of the guns, we went into his like apartment, and I was simultaneoly like super enthralled because I was like seeing part of filmmaking that I'd never seen before, and scared absolutely shitless of this guy. like are we about to be murdered at this guy's house right now? It was very, very uncomfortable. All right, what Beat, you got another one? We'll come back to Nick here in a sec.
I like the gunman taking the crunch bar out of the
Like
that was really cute.
I don't know that guy's name. I should learn that actor's name. I know him from this, and like he's like Genghis Khan in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I love that guy. That's a pretty great moment. So a lot of this movie is improvised. They didn't have an ending initially, and they didn't know who John McClane was until they got to the second half of the film. They were like. So they had to go and reshoot some things. So that moment near the beginning when he's had this kind of fight with Holly, and then he bangs his head on the bathroom door. Yeah. That was a reshoot because they had finally figured out who John McClane was at that point, and had to kind of go back and like add a couple things to sort of flesh out the character for the first half of the film. And the idea is that he's just a normal dude who's stuck in a really, really bad situation and just doing the best he can. And that's not just this situation, that's his entire life. His entire life is a bad situation that he's just doing the best he can.
That was one thing I actually wrote down, was that it always looks like he's talking to himself in a mirror. And in fact, he narrates a lot. He talks aloud to himself, and he does talk to himself in a mirror in a few cases, or reflection. And that's, when you do that, it's because you're under stress. You're trying to calm yourself down.
Yeah, and I think he's his own therapist. I think that's he probably has probably killed people or whatever, and has to go see the department psychologist or whatever to be cleared for duty. You see that in movies and shows all the time, and so I sort of imagine that like he does that, and he like fights his way through it and is like real pissy about it, and then he continues his therapy, but he just does it with himself.
Yeah,
Yeah. Any others, Beat, that you got for us?
Ew. ill to the FBI agents, and ill to the chief of police, and ill to the news reporter.
Yeah, they're all pretty equal.
I hated all of them.
William Atherton is like notorious. Like that was his job in film, especially in the 80s, was to be an a-hole. He's in Ghostbusters. He's an a-hole. There's something I actually kind of love about the FBI agents. I think just because the humor of it, Johnson and Johnson,
They just show up.
And
They just walk in, show up.
and originally the white FBI agent is the one who said no relation, but he was like, I don't think I should say it because I think it'll look racist if I say it, so we got to have the other guy say it. So I really like. There's something I think is really funny about those guys. But yeah, so a lot of this movie was improvised. So a lot of these like funny moments. The Hans John scene when he meets Hans for the first time in person, and they do the whole Bill Clay thing, and he hands him the gun. That scene wasn't in the script. They were trying to figure out a way where they could get them to like have some sort of encounter with each other, and at some point they realized that Alan Rickman could do kind of a passable American accent, and they're like, this is our opportunity. So they wrote the scene specifically on the spot for them to do.
Wow.
So a lot of moments like that, I think, in this movie.
Sure.
Yeah, I did like that scene because I thought it was like full circle from the moment where he was like, don't, like you said, under the table, when he was like, if you get a chance to kill him, and he hesitated, and that gave him the idea to like put on the accent and, be saved. But in that moment, if he would have killed Hans, it pretty much would have been over. Game point from that. He kills the king.
Yeah, maybe, then the question is like, is Theo money hungry? Is Theo gonna keep? But Theo doesn't know how the electromagnetic lock is going to be disabled.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, maybe you're right. But I don't know that. I never get the feeling at any point John wants to kill anyone. Like his first thing is not typically to murder someone. He has a fight with somebody, he tries to disarm people or whatever, and he defends himself. But never do I really feel like he's trying to like put a bullet in somebody's brain without them looking.
Yeah, that first fight where they fall down the stairs and
then an accident.
Right. He kind of looks at him like, oh, dang. Like, I mean, he didn't look like he wanted to do that.
No.
But then once it was done, it was okay. A little bit, okay, what's the next procedure? Like, how do I move forward? How do I get, stuff off of him and use it to my advantage?
So I just realized I never gave a description of what the film was. Dwayne will have done it in the intro. But the book that this is based on, Nothing Lasts Forever, is sort of a detective book, and I think it is terrorists and not thieves. He's actually going to see his daughter and not his wife. But he does, the first guy he encounters, he does break his neck. But in the book, he breaks his neck on purpose, and in the movie, it's purely an accident.
Okay.
But the interesting, since we're talking about the book, there is a first film based on the first book, the story before this one, and it says freaking has lost my brain what the movie's called. I can tell you that it was Frank Sinatra starred in the film, and in his contract he had that if there were any sequels that he would reprise the role. And when it came time to make this film, Frank Sinatra was like 72 years old, and it was like, oh well, he's clearly too old to do it. So they went with someone else, and they tried to cast a whole bunch of other people. They tried like Schwarzenegger, basically anybody they mentioned in the film, Stallone, Robert De Niro, and interestingly, I think Robert De Niro turned it down, maybe, and Bruce Willis at the same time turned down a different movie, and the movies that each of them turned down, the other person ended up in. So the movie that Bruce Willis turned down, he was supposed to be a supporting character in that Robert De Niro movie, and then Robert De Niro turned down being John McClane. It's just called The Detective. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for looking that up.
Yeah.
So if you want to see the first, and I don't think his name is John McClane in the film. I think they used his character from the book's name, and it's similar.
John Leland.
Leland, John. I knew there was
Leland.
it was a J name for sure, so it's John Leland. So yeah, that's a little info about the book and the previous film. I've never seen The Detective, so maybe we'll put it on the wheel beat. Mm-hmm. Okay, Pete, what else you got? Sorry, I'm just dragging this on. I apologize.
My last note is I love the moment when Officer Powell was it kind of like a little redemption moment for him when he shot the brother
Carl. Yeah, they
yeah,
saves the day.
Carl, he hadn't shot anybody or, picked up his gun since because he's been on desk duty.
I'm going to tell you
just
that
in that moment, what?
I was just going to say, I'm going to tell you that Nick clapped when that happened.
I was like,
Yeah.
hey!
I didn't clap, but I was smiling. And I was like, oh, yeah. I love that. And then when they first seen each other, the laughing and like the relief being like lifted off of his shoulders to see.
The hug.
Yeah, the hug and them laughing. I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
I love the way that they did his character too, because he's a desk cop, but he's intuitive as well. Like one thing that I actually caught was when he's driving up, and the security guard, I'm using quotes because it wasn't the security guard, he's just staring out the window at him. Security guards wouldn't necessarily just do that, just stare at him. And I was like, did he pick up on that? Was that a little bit of a giveaway that something is maybe a little bit off here?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I love, obviously this was put in there, but I love the fact that he's singing Let It Snow. When the body falls and hits his car, and all hell just breaks loose.
Well, and they bring the song back.
They bring it back at the end.
of the film,
yeah, of course.
And for people that don't know, it was Reginald VelJohnson, probably best known outside of this for playing a cop on Family Matters.
Yeah.
With the Urkel show.
Yeah.
So, and I'll tell you, for my new diehard fans in the room, that Al shows up in the sequel.
Oh,
so
very cool.
I don't know if you guys plan on watching the sequel, but also takes place at Christmas time.
Oh, well, there you go. That's convenient for that's just when he goes to work, I guess.
Most of the Die Hard movies are like, look, they're fun and I enjoy every single one of them, but most of them are not that great. This first one's excellent. I really, really fucking love the third one. The third one is, I would watch that with you guys. If you guys want to do a Die Hard 3, they're called Die Hard with a Vengeance.
I was going to say, that's Die Hard with a Vengeance.
If you guys want to watch that, and we'll do another episode at some point, I would gladly watch that because I really, really, really love that film. It's fun. That one's got Sam Jackson in it. And it's always a good time with Sam Jackson.
Sam Jackson and Bruce Willis. That sounds like a
little Pulp Fiction reunion.
Little bit, yeah.
Okay, so you got some more notes for us?
Yeah, I got a few. So, well, I mean, I guess this is just in general. My goodness, there was a lot of, we talked about this, but so many squibs. Which, if you don't know what a squib is, it's essentially a little explosive that is on your person, the actor, and they essentially will have like a blood packet on top of it. They don't do it so much anymore. They can do that stuff digitally, or they like to do it.
Boo.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, safety. Believe me, I've wanted to be squibbed and have been told, no, we're not going to do that because we're going to do it digital, and was a little sad. But the squibs, the stunt work with the glass too, a lot of that was super impressive. And again, just kind of along that, the helicopter work as well, with flying low like that at that speed
Through those buildings.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah,
and I was pretty dang sure that was actually happening.
Oh yeah, that's happening.
So that was impressive.
So you were talking about the glass. Were you talking about like when they shot the glass, or when just in general?
Well, I mean, like there's ones that I can think of specifically where one of the Germans was getting shot in the legs, or one of the guys. I don't know if he was German, but one of them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, when he was running at him.
Yeah, and he goes like face first into like glass.
It's like that guy's dead.
And that's
He dead.
He what?
He dead.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, but like at the same time, just for the stunt, man, that's some impressive work. There was some impressive stunt work. The high fall at the end.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, we'll talk about the Han.
Yeah. But
that's one of the most famous stories about Die Hard that people have heard.
Sure.
But we're gonna cover it because we want to be somewhat thorough. So we will cover that story.
Sure.
But the reason why I asked about the glass is there's a really great moment where John is he's trying to break the glass with the chair.
Right.
So that took many takes because the glass would not break. Oh. And he literally hit it so hard the chair fell apart before the glass broke.
I could see that happening.
So
wow,
that's a fun. And you probably can find. I mean, I've seen clips of it. Like there's outtakes and stuff. So
sure,
you probably can find that online if people
bouncing off the glass.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, I wonder.
They're like hit it again, and he's like, with what? He's like holding like just the back of the chair. He's like, with what?
That's great. So I guess I only had, I guess, 3 more. So obviously we're getting to the end here. I loved how when John shows up at the end, there's all the sparks behind him. There's a lot of light behind him.
The emergency light,
He's
yeah.
backlit.
Yeah.
So Hans can see what's in front of him when there's light showing there, but because he's backlit, it's a little bit silhouettes. So he very easily could hide something, and of course
he did.
Of course he did.
I love Holly's reaction to seeing how hurt he is too.
Yeah.
Like how much he's been through, and she's just like,
"Oh, John."
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, yeah. It's.
I think she says, "Jesus."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. There's love there. That's that Christmas love there.
The Christmas love, if you say so.
Yeah. These two, I may have taken a liberty with this second note. First, one of my last notes. So, the thing that starts the fall is letting go of the Rolex, which to me was like, it was like, oh, you got to see it. It's a Rolex. And he's like, oh, I'll see it later.
Yeah.
And he sees the Rolex, and
later.
It's later.
Yeah.
And to me, it also kind of signified like the greed. When you take away the greed, he falls.
And I think that's like I think this was people write this movie off a little bit because it's like a kind of a dumb action movie, but it's not really that dumb. It's actually really, really smart.
I don't like dumb action movies.
Yeah.
It
to your point, I think comes full circle, and it's also sort of like, I'm going to get a little like snobby artsy here a little bit, that, he views this job as like a status symbol and like a shackle on their marriage. And like literally what he does is he takes the symbol of this job off her wrist.
He takes it off.
Right. So, not to get all like, well, actually, but, yeah, I mean, I think there's some really, really smart storytelling and man, they kind of knew how to do that in the 80s. You see, there's a lot of really great 80s movies that do that. So,
so just my last one, which I think I may be taking a little bit of a liberty with, but so Christmas movie, Let It Snow, and at the very end, it's raining down paper.
The paper.
And for me, I thought, and I don't know if I ever caught it, but I was like, are those like the bonds?
They are.
Yeah. So it was like, only in LA would it rain, or not rain, would it snow money.
Well, I think it's a good point. I think it's a really good point. And, again, back to John's earlier comment, California.
Yeah, exactly.
Like only in California.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the Hans fall, just to cover it. I know people have heard it a bunch of times. So they dropped. First before I get into that, Alan Rickman.
Oh,
fucking genius! B jumped in on the bike and was like, "Is that Snape?"
I love him.
Yeah, he's freaking great. He was a
One of my favorites.
Primarily a stage actor in England. He had just moved to L.A., and he had been in LA for 2 days, and they offered him this job. And don't you hate that? I mean, he's got a pedigree.
That's
right?
just the worst when you just move somewhere and they offer you.
Well, I just meant as an actor, like you got to go on all these auditions and stuff, and this guy just moves to LA, and they're like,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he just moves in, and hey, yeah, you want to do this with Bruce Willis?
He didn't want to take the part initially because he was like, oh, it's a villain part, and it's my first movie. He'd never been in a movie before.
Right.
This is Alan Rickman's. So even if you were like, Die Hard's fine or whatever, you have to recognize that we would not have all these like amazing films with Alan Rickman, probably, especially like him as a villain, like Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I mean, he's just maybe Snape.
Heck,
I
was gonna say Snape.
I mean, he's so iconic. Again, rest in peace, Alan Rickman. And it's mind-boggling that this was his first feature film.
He showed amazing chops. Yeah. I mean, he obviously was classically trained, knew what he was doing. There are traps that you can fall into. I've seen it happen, and goodness gracious, he was just he's mesmerizing on the screen, and that's not an easy thing to go from being a stage actor and then translating that to the screen. That's not just like, oh, okay, I'll just do the exact same thing. It is a different skill. The camera picks up things differently than it does in the theater, to a degree, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. So The Fall.
Yes.
So they did actually drop Alan Rickman. They had him on a rope, and then they let go of the rope. He did a 40-foot fall onto an airbag.
Right.
That's not as high up as it's not. It's not 300 feet, but it's still a long way. It's 40 feet's a long way to go.
It's huge. It's a huge fall.
And so they waited for his last day,
right,
to shoot this.
Right.
And they set him up and they said, we're going to do this on the count of 3. And they said 1, 2, and they let him go on 2.
Right.
So famously, his reaction, his shocked expression of falling is actually Alan Rickman's surprise at being let go early. Which is genius.
Yeah, I mean,
so smart.
That's one of those cerebral things that you can do. When you know that you're going to be falling.
And I don't know if in today's climate you can get away with it as much. Something like that, just is safety wise.
I can say that I have had squibs go off before they told me they were going to.
On a 20th Century Fox project, though.
It actually was on the Fox lot.
No, Fox
but it
lot,
wasn't.
But it could have been.
It wasn't a Fox picture.
So for people that don't know,
yeah.
Like I can rent out time on the Fox lot or on the Universal lot or whatever. So it can be a small budget thing. So it doesn't just because you shoot something on the Fox lot doesn't mean it's actually Fox, right?
True, absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
I think
it's funny that they only counted to 2, and that was his thing when he was killing people on set, was the 1, 2, and then he never said 3.
That might have actually been a little wink and a nod.
Maybe.
But
he did say 3 for what's his name, Takagi.
Yes, he did. He did wait for and then some. He said 3, and he was still talking, and then just shot him. But I do just kind of want to get back to that 40 feet when you are acting. I mean, I've had stunts where I drop 15 feet onto a crash pad or something like that. That's
a long way.
That is a long way. Yeah. That is scary. 40 feet. I don't care what's beneath you. That's terrifying. It really is, especially when you're looking up, you're acting, you're in the role. As soon as you're let go of that, your instincts do kick in, and it is scary.
You just piss yourself. Yeah, and you're talking about a dude who's never done a film,
right?
And so probably he surely maybe some falls on stage, but like your stages only go up so high.
Stages, yeah,
they can only be so tall,
right? And how many stage shows actually have falls like that?
Oh
anyways?
yeah, no, I mean
it's not
pretty rare.
I mean, maybe. I was going to say Spider-Man, but I don't.
Right, well, we won't go there, I guess, because a lot of people got hurt.
True. Yeah.
Okay, so before I go into the Christmas thing, does anybody have anything else they want to say about? I mean, we can come back and recap the film and say last bits if we want to, but there was no other notes in the meantime.
Nothing that I deleted all the rest of them because I think we covered pretty much everything. I had about 30 other ones, but we covered everything.
The only thing I had left was 2 funny quips. Is him falling out. He got a taste of what Dumbledore had, and Snape was about a cadaver and everybody up in there, and it was great.
Nice,
but that's it. Okay.
Okay, so again, I'm kind of like going off of something that I previously wrote, so if it sounds like I'm reading at all, it's because I'm reading at all. So there's this sort of battle amongst people about whether this is a Christmas movie or not. Do you guys want to weigh in ahead of time, or do you want to wait until I kind of give my case?
I mean,
we could do both.
You're prepared, so I'll shoot from the cuff right now.
Sure.
If that's okay. Yeah. For me, yeah, because Christmas has everything to do with family, and a lot of this really did come down to family. Once family was involved, like the beginning has to do with family. For some reason, the kids are involved. I don't know how the news got there and were allowed to throw the kids on the air.
Well, he threatened the housekeeper.
But why would the news station allow? I don't think they'd allow that nowadays.
He'd gone rogue.
Yeah, he had gone rogue. Yeah,
ew. Big break.
Ew, right? That's the ew moment. Ew. Yeah.
Yes.
But it to me it speaks a lot to family and kind of what you'll do to get to that family, and I guess that's one thing that always rings true for me at the holidays personally, because I do live far away from my family, and it is always kind of to get there, and it's a little bit of an adventure. Mm-hmm. Obviously not the same, but to me it's not just the timing that they had it in, but yeah, it's a family movie.
Beat, where do you sit on this now that you've seen the movie?
I vote no.
I love it.
I don't think it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a movie and it was actiony, and I didn't see the Christmas. Yes, they had the Christmas moments and the nods to Christmas, but it wasn't Christmas for me.
Okay, I love that. I love that you guys are split on this. I'm gonna give you guys some input, and then we'll see where you stand at the end. We'll see. Maybe you'll switch. Maybe you'll both switch.
All right.
That'd be hilarious. So, I think part of what makes people want this to be a Christmas film is because it's like edgy, and it's not like Scrooge, right? It's not the shop around the corner or whatever. It's like this edgy, dark thing. Christmas isn't supposed to be violent, it's like freaking putting Sweeney Todd out on Valentine's Day or whatever, right? Like that's when they released that film. I would argue that I think there are edgier films that have just as much claim, if not more claim, to Christmas. So just to kind of tackle that concept, we're talking like Black Christmas, Silent Night, Deadly Night, The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Black Christmas is so good.
Rare Exports, which we have done an episode on. Check out the Rare Exports episode of You the Right Thing. And I think they're probably even more thematically Christmassy. And if you want to really talk about a really dark one, I think more than any of those, give me freaking Gremlins. That movie is like a horror movie disguised as a family film, and it is dark and violent, and but it's also so Christmassy. And there's that whole like story about why the girlfriend hates Christmas. Like he's like, "Why do you hate Christmas?" And then she tells the story of the Christmas her father didn't show up, and it's just like that is one of the most horrifying stories, like bits of dialogue I've ever heard in a movie. And I think like there's like people getting murdered and thrown out of windows and run over with tractors, and there's some creatures getting microwaved and blended, and man, that is a rough movie. They even do like like the creepy song on the record, and that's a dark movie, man.
Right.
That's a real freaking Joe Dante, man. That's a real dark movie. And the story of that is, or the rumor of that is, that is one of the reasons that the rating of PG-13 came about. Is it's a PG film.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, we can't make a Steven Spielberg, because Spielberg produced this movie.
Right.
We can't make a Steven Spielberg movie rated R. That's this movie about this little mogwai thing that's cute and for
Right.
kids and whatever. So they opted to give it a PG rating instead of an R rating. And they were like, we got to come up with something new. We got to come up with like an in between here. So that's how I understand the PG-13 to have come about, was because of Gremlins.
Wow.
But back to Die Hard. Basically, that's my way of saying I think Gremlins is a much edgier Christmas film
Right.
than Die Hard. So let's talk about intent. So this argument has been like, over the last like 5 to 10 years, has become more and more popular. People, it's my favorite Christmas movie is Die Hard or whatever. The writer of this, Stephen D'Souza, has since embraced all this attention. You know, not doing a ton with his career. And so, you know, he's like jumping onto this thing that's probably one of his greatest creations, is this Die Hard film. And so he's sort of like jumped on the bandwagon. He's like, yeah, it's totally, I wrote the movie and it's totally a Christmas movie. So it's sort of like, well, the writer says it's a Christmas movie, so that means it has to be a Christmas movie. However, so here's what he says. He says the entire film takes place at Christmas, so point for Die Hard, Christmas, right? However, I'm going to argue that when a movie takes place doesn't necessarily classify it as that type of film. So Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut takes place entirely at Christmas. I certainly don't consider that a Christmas movie. The entirety of Iron Man 3 takes place at Christmas time. Don't consider that. No, I've never heard anybody go Iron Man 3 is a Christmas movie. The movie Go with Timothy Olyphant takes place at Christmas time. The Apartment, which we've done on View the Right Thing, check out the View the Right Thing episode of The Apartment, takes place almost entirely at Christmas to New Year's. LA Confidential, which is on our wheel, Beat hasn't seen, takes place during the Christmas season again. So it's like, if you have to argue setting dictates when the movie takes place or what kind of movie it is, then you cannot argue against It's a Wonderful Life. The majority of It's a Wonderful Life does not take place at Christmas time. So, but that is considered to be the quintessential Christmas movie. So if you think that's a Christmas movie, but most of the movie doesn't take place at only a couple scenes take place at Christmas, then you can't. If you're saying that the setting matters, then you can't count It's a Wonderful Life as a Christmas film anymore. It's gone, right? So, there's a few other ones that, like, there's like a 007 movie that takes place on Her Majesty's Secret Service. But like, nobody's like, George Lazenby's my favorite James Bond. I love that Christmas movie. Nobody says that, right? So, you know, okay, so that's the setting. So then D'Souza says that John McClane commits himself to a Christ-like sacrifice. He walks on broken glass and all this stuff. But Harry Potter has scenes at Christmas, and the characters on a regular basis sacrifice themselves for others. But the majority of those movies don't take place at Christmas time. Most of those movies you wouldn't see on TV. Like, you wouldn't see Prisoner of Azkaban on TV at Christmas time. You would maybe see the first two because they have Christmas scenes, right?
Right.
And they're considered these, like, they're Christopher Columbus, Chris Columbus films, who's, you know, known for stuff like Home Alone and whatever. So you kind of like, it's easy to lump those into family holiday time things, but those Harry Potter movies, like Order of Phoenix, that's not a Christmas movie, right? But certainly characters sacrificing themselves for others. And I can't think of any other modern film character that's more Christ-like than Harry Potter. Like, the kid freaking like sacrifices himself to, like, you know, like,
I mean, the only one I can think of is Matrix.
But I mean,
But that's not at Christmas.
And maybe to your point, there are a lot of similarities between Neo and and Harry Potter. I would say that, like, if you look at all the meanings behind the names and stuff in Harry Potter, like the frickin' broom is called a nimbus, and I think people often assume that that's like a cloud reference, but you know, when you see pictures, especially in Catholic pictures of the baby Jesus, and he's got that little halo around the back of his head, that little shiny thing, that's called a frickin' nimbus, folks. So, you know, so I don't count Harry Potter in a Christmas thing. So I don't think sacrificing yourself should count. No. But what the writer of this film does not talk about is the intentions that they had when they made this film. He never talks about how they wanted to make an action film that takes place at Christmas. It's never been in the conversation. And I don't think it was to, like, you know, enshrine itself among the Christmas classics. You know, he was completely silent about that until this became a popular, like, essentially a meme.
Yeah.
Die Hard's my favorite Christmas thing.
Yeah.
So that's the writer out of the way here. So, genre. This is such a weird topic that, you know, a lot of people, everybody loves film, pretty much. Not everybody, but most people love film. And most people sort of see themselves as critics. This is good. This is bad. I like this film. I didn't like this film, whatever. And I think there's a big misunderstanding about what genre is, and sort of how there's sort of like a bunch of big ones, and then there's a whole bunch of little ones and umbrellas underneath, right? So you can have horror, but under horror, there's a whole bunch of other things. And like thriller is not its own genre. It's a horror genre. Right. It's a subgenre of horror. Right. So, and like suspense films like Alfred Hitchcock, you know, that stuff falls under the horror category. So let's talk about the genre thing a little bit. I think there are some compelling cases for this being quote unquote Christmas film. So there's a really clear anti-consumerism message about the Nakatomi Corporation and how they've like warped the values, the family values of the McLean family, and we kind of touched on that a little bit with like the Rolex being a symbol of that and sort of the shackle coming off, right? It's a really common thing that you see very, very consistently in films that we consider to be Christmas films, even movies like Home Alone, where their priorities are so are about the vacation and getting the pizza and paying for this and getting the nice hotel and all this stuff, and it clouds their ability to see that they've left Kevin at home. By the way, Home Alone episode available on View the Right Thing. Check it out. So it's a really common sort of trope that you see in what we consider to be Christmas films, and there's always this like kind of clear divide between the haves and the have-nots. And usually these stories always show the working classes triumphant, and that's very much what we see in this film is the haves and the haves. John McClane is very much a has-not. He doesn't even have his family, and by the end of the film, he gets everything he needs, right? Yep. Usually in Christmas films, the villain is greedy, and they see the possessions of others as something that they should take. Really great example, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Yep. Right. Yep. This film features a family that's split apart and they're trying to reunite at Christmas. Let's go back to Home Alone if we want, or It's a Wonderful Life, or whatever. A lot of films sort of feature Christmas films feature that. And then there's music. I think that when you talk about if something's a quote unquote Christmas film, that the music should probably play a part in it. We have Let It Snow and freaking Christmas in Hollis. Yeah. Like, how could you not like love that song and be like, oh yeah, this puts me in the Christmas spirit? There
was also and I guess I don't know what it's commonly referred to, Ode to Joy.
Ode to Joy, yeah.
Which is kind of a theme. And when Hans is on screen, it's played in a minor tone.
Sure.
And then when things are triumphant, it goes back to a major.
Well, and since you bring up Ode to Joy, the composer for this film did not want to use Ode to Joy, and McTiernan was like, "You're a big Kubrick guy, right?" He's like, "I love Kubrick," and he's like, "Well, he used he used Beethoven in Clockwork Orange for the
That's
really
right.
violent scene,
That's right.
and he was like, "Okay, I'll do it." And so they ended up using Ode to Joy, and Ode to Joy is basically it's kind of as much a signature of the Die Hard series as a whole as Yippee-Ki-Yay Motherfucker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's like to the point that when you watch trailers for a new Die Hard film, they
It's
always put Ode to Joy in the trailers.
Right, they do. Yeah.
So so it's a big deal. So okay, let's get back to genre. So let's talk about some things that are against it in the genre thing. I'm going to first jump in with Christmas in Hollis since we just were talking about it. My brain just shut off just now. I'll come back to it.
That's cool.
It's great when my brain does that. It happens all the time in the podcast.
I've been there.
So most, or a lot of people, don't really feel like the story's about how the company warps family values. That it's more about how archaic John is in his like sort of misogynistic, patriarchal ways. It's like he's got these views regarding women taking roles of power at the workplace. Like he believes that like he should be the breadwinner and that she should stay home, and that the movie's more about that than it is about the Nakatomi Corporation's greed, because we hear very little about Nakatomi's greed. What we know is they have priceless art, like I don't know, like a Degas or something in the vault, and they have all these old Barabons from like 1979. Worth a lot of money that they're probably keeping for like tax purposes or whatever.
The samurai suit.
The samurai suit, which the logo, the Nakatomi logo, looks like a samurai helmet, which I think is like a nice little cool thing. But we don't really see a lot about their greed. And it's not talked about. No, they're never really seen as like an evil corporation. In fact, they're building this beautiful bridge somewhere, right?
Right.
So maybe that's not really a factor, right? Villains in any story are almost always covetous and greedy, right? So like, yeah, you can point to The Grinch That Stole Christmas, but you can probably point to, the villain in Despicable Me as being, covetous and greedy, right? Like there's,
Sure.
If you've got a villain in a movie, they usually are trying to see something that's not theirs anyways.
Right.
So, maybe that's not a great argument either. So take the word Christmas and replace it with the word recital, and you have like tons of non-holiday films about dads who are too busy to be there for his kids, right?
Liar,
about families that are split up,
Sure.
Click or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
None of, we don't consider any of those Christmas films. So the music being sort of a byproduct of the backdrop, it's done less to evoke a feeling of or demonstrate the Christmas feeling. Like I've seen movies that take place during spring break in Mexico, but because there's Latin music, I don't go, that's a foreign film.
Yeah.
I don't look at the music and go, this dictates what, there's French music in this. This is a French foreign film. This must be Godard,
Right.
It's not Truffaut. So I don't know that the music is necessarily an argument. Gratuitous murder. So there's between, and I think I've seen I've never actually stopped and counted. I almost did it tonight, but I've never stopped and counted the body count before. There's somewhere between 18 and 21 bodies in this film. Dead people, not physical bodies, but dead bodies. Would you like to know how many are in part 2? Maybe want to guess? 18 in this one.
I'll throw a ballpark out
Sure.
there. In number 2.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, if we're going to continue kind of what we're doing, I'm going to say it at least doubles.
Okay, so you're thinking like 36 to 40, somewhere in that area.
I'm thinking like, around like 40 to 50.
Beat, do you want to take a guess?
I'm gonna say I don't know.
It's either a lot more or like
164.
See, there you go.
They ramp things up a little bit in part 2.
Just a little.
So gratuitous violence, not exactly like this warm, fuzzy, put on a sweater, like get some cocoa feeling, right? Like it does not evoke Christmas, right? So like if we're talking about like genre type things, you don't see that in what you consider to be other classic Christmas films. So it's a little hard to argue that. But the most important thing that I'm going to say is that Christmas isn't a genre. That's not a genre of film. So when when you have a genre, you have sort of like this grouping of things that make them very unique. And we've already said that the time of the year doesn't matter. The music can't be a factor necessarily. And so you don't really have a group of things that all Christmas films have in common that make them a Christmas film, that like separates them from other things, right? Like you have like certain kinds of Westerns, like spaghetti Westerns and stuff, and they all have these like really similar common themes. A lone man up against a completely outnumbered, a stranger to the town, seen as sort of like a savior-like character and mysterious and probably disappears by the end of the film. No one ever sees again. There are really specific things that, a slasher film or a poltergeist film, those all have monster films. Man versus Nature, Jaws or Jurassic Park. A lot of people don't think that Jurassic Park's a horror film. It's a movie about man versus nature. So there are very, very specific criteria that sort of slot something into a genre. And we just don't really have that for Christmas because, as we just discussed, these elements are present in so many other things. Right? So it's difficult to be like, oh yeah, it's a Christmas film when the concept of Christmas as a genre doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. I've actually had discussions with people about if The Nightmare Before Christmas
is it Christmas film or Halloween film?
That's exactly it. Is it Christmas or Halloween? And it's like, well, I don't think it's necessarily either.
I'll give you my hot take.
Yeah,
Halloween film.
That's what I go with too.
Yeah,
that's right.
Halloween film.
Yeah,
I've never seen it.
Oh my god, we'll add it to the list.
Oh,
you'll like that one, B. It's right up your alley.
That's good.
So the problem with that though. This whole argument. So, right, it kind of feels like I'm like leaning one way, right? But the problem is that a Christmas movie, quote unquote, I think moves beyond the concept of tropes, right? So, we say that this is what a genre has to be. It has to meet a certain criteria. I'm not sure that Christmas necessarily has to, right? Maybe it's something more than that, right? Like Christmas is a feeling, right? So what I would maybe argue, if you want to be in the Christmas camp, is that a Christmas film is a film with cultural significance in the era in which it displays. So does this film have cultural significance for Christmas time? Does this movie have cultural significance for spring break or Easter or whatever it is, right? And I think to the point of Die Hard, this film has been entered into the National Library of Congress, which the requirement for that is that it needs to have some type of cultural significance. So yeah, Eyes Wide Shut takes place in December, but it doesn't have the plot of that film, or the audience reactions. They don't show any significance to our culture. If you look at Google searches, you can do a Google search and see when things get searched most. You'll find that Die Hard, the most often time that Die Hard is searched on Google is at Christmas time, which tells me that it spikes at December at the exact same time, roughly the same ratio as Elf, Home Alone, and Love Actually. All three films which people think are greatly considered to be Christmas films, right?
Sure.
It's been parodied. It's been stolen from. It's quoted. People wear Halloween costumes. There are toys. There's a board game. There's multiple video games, all based on this movie. It made Bruce Willis a star outside of television. It gave us Alan Rickman to film. So, let's say you just are super against the idea that this is a Christmas film. You cannot argue, and that's fine. Take that at face value, but you cannot argue against its cultural significance. This film has had a massive, massive impact on the world of film and pop culture in general, and we have to recognize that. So,
absolutely.
So the question is, Beat, is this a Christmas film or is it not a Christmas film to you?
This is very much 100% not a Christmas film.
Beat's still in the same camp. Nick?
I'm gonna have to still stick with the fact that it is, and also kind of to just solidify my point there is, I have other films that aren't even Christmas film, like that anybody would consider Christmas film. But if you're asking me, yes, because like Star Wars is a Christmas film to me because I watch that with my family around that time of year. It's just, I don't know, there is something about it that evokes that time of year to me. So yeah, I would have to stick in the same camp.
So I'll kind of boil down where I'm at on this, so that you guys kind of know where I'm at. I think this is the Schrodinger's cat of films. It is both a Christmas film and absolutely not a Christmas film all at the exact same time. And I think a little bit to your point, I believe that it has had a massive cultural significance to our society. I think both sides are actually right. And I think that's okay. And I tend to sort of side a little more towards Christmas just because I never watched this movie anytime but Christmas time.
Same here, I guess.
But I totally get the not Christmas thing too. It's not a real genre, but it has this cultural significance. And I think that's kind of to your point. If you watch Harry Potter every freaking Christmas, that's a Christmas movie to you because that's what makes you think of Christmas. Right. You do this with your family, you spend time with them, and you feel good about yourselves and this group. So I think if it is to you, then it is. And I love that it's not to Beat, but it is to you, and we've got both sides here, and they're both equally fucking right, and I love it. But for the
you hear that, Nick?
I hear it.
For the viewsters listening, I'm gonna if you are in Beat's camp, you were saying it's not a Christmas film. I have a challenge for you. I want you to grab Die Hard and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, find somebody you love, and watch them as a holiday heist double feature.
Ooh.
And just enjoy your time with the people that you love. So that's my challenge. For what it's worth, I have in the past declared this as my favorite Christmas film.
Oh goodness.
I don't anymore, but I have in the past. I feel like I should tell people that. So that's our Die Hard episode. It went a little long. I'm sorry, Beat, that you're up really late. Real quick, Beat, do you recommend this film? Where do you sit on this?
I would recommend it. Anytime but Christmas.
Anytime but Christmas. You wouldn't watch this at Christmas. If somebody was like, I've not seen Die Hard, or I haven't seen it in a long time, and I really want to watch it in December, you wouldn't watch it with them?
I tell them they have to wait for the first.
Oh, you're amazing. You're absolutely amazing. Okay, so wait, the 1st of January?
Yeah.
Brutal. Nick, would you watch this again with me? Did you recommend this to people?
Would I recommend this? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I will say that this was one of the films that for a very long time, because I haven't seen it until tonight, where it was like, I don't quite get the hype behind it.
Yeah.
It's an action film. And then sitting there like, looking at all this, it was like, oh, this is actually like, this is kind of in depth, and you can go into it and have it really be something that's somewhat meaningful, or you take away stuff from it. It's not just a stupid action movie. It has good redeeming qualities to it. I absolutely would recommend this. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. So we're gonna watch more Die Hards then. Like, Beat, are you dying to see the second one?
Yeah, I'll watch it.
Yeah. So. Second one is also John McTiernan, same director. Wait, is it? No, it's Rennie Harlin. Not a great director, Rennie Harlin.
Okay.
It's not the film that this one was. I'm just gonna tell you. It feels a little like it is what it is. It's like, does everything for the sake of doing it. Like, oh, we can blow things up, so let's blow things up. Again, like I said, there's a pretty high body count. Do you guys want to take a guess where the second one takes place?
You mean city-wise?
Just
New
just
York.
in general. So Beat says New York.
Gosh, if it's Christmas, I would say it's probably on vacation somewhere, would be my guess.
Okay.
But I don't know where.
Okay, what if I said, name a more specific place, not like a city, but a location?
A location?
Mm-hmm.
If we have to go with that, then I would probably say Empire State Building or something.
Empire State Building. Beat,
Yeah.
what you got?
Oh my gosh. I don't know.
Well, so the first... Okay, so you want me to just tell you where it takes place?
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
The entire movie takes place in an airport.
Okay.
Oh God.
Okay.
Not an airport.
Yeah. So there's this really cool thing that happens. I love this with the Die Hard films, and I wish they could make another one. I don't think they will. But especially with Bruce Willis retiring. The movies progressively get bigger. So you have a building, then an airport, and then it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger. And I kind of assume the only place they can go in any future one would have to be space.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I just pointed up space.
Yeah. So I really would. Then we're at that point. We're talking about Armageddon, I guess. But like
It really takes the John McClane, like it takes John McClane from the everyday cop
to a whole new world.
whole-
Come on. Oh, jeez.
Oh boy, it really is Armageddon because it's Bruce Willis in space.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh jeez.
So yeah, I although I will say that Bruce Willis did. He's so smart. He's like, I'm gonna take care of my family. He sold his likeness for deepfake. He was like, you can keep using me.
Really?
Yeah. So in theory, I guess they could make another Die Hard movie.
Was Live Free and or Die Hard the last one? Is that Die Hard 5? It was like
I think that
2007.
one. I think that's the last one. It's either that one or A Good Day to Die Hard. I can't remember which one came first.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But yeah. So, anyways, I'm glad that you guys want to see other ones. I'm excited to watch at least one or two more with you guys.
Yeah.
But which we got here?
That's the last one.
A Good Day to Die Hard
Good
was
Day
the
to
last
Die
one.
Hard was
Yeah.
the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of
Such
go.
a great title too.
They kind of go off the rails a little bit. They go PG-13. It's a little disappointing.
You're telling me this one wasn't PG-13?
This one was absolutely not. Only 18 bodies, right? Like that's.
That's-
I know I've seen PG-13 movies
tame.
with more bodies. Lord of
Star
the
Wars
Rings.
has way more.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
Shoot. Yeah, you can go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gremlins does not, but whatever. Okay, so our next movie is just Beat and I. Beat, are you ready to know what our next holiday film is? It is.
It's- yeah.
It is. It's very exciting. So you're going to need to watch this so you can listen to our podcast on
I'm
it.
excited.
It is called Killer Raccoons 2. Dark Christmas in the Dark.
Oh my god, that is a wonderful title.
And it is a little like Die Hard or like Under Siege 2-ish, in that it's people stuck on a train with killer raccoons with guns.
I'm so excited.
There are many puppets and lots of digital muzzle flashes, and it is going to be absolutely bananas, and I'm very excited to watch this with Beat.
So it's Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy meets Snakes on a plane.
Less evolved than Rocket from
Oh,
Guardians of
okay.
the Galaxy.
All
Like,
right.
I don't think they talk, and they are very much puppets. Yeah, so it's
Sounds wonderful.
I can't wait. I can't wait. So next week, everybody, you got a week to go rent Killer Raccoons 2, Dark Christmas in the Dark. That is the actual subtitle, Dark Christmas in the Dark. Nick, do you want to plug like social media or anything?
Oh goodness, sure. My social media is just my name. Pretty simple. At Nick Eversman. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram.
Are you on the TikToks?
I have a TikTok and it's actually different. I think it's Nick Eversman Official or something like that. But I'm not on it as much yet.
That's because it's the official one, and he doesn't want to like swear and put thirst traps on it. But if you go to his Instagram, the thirst traps are there
I have plenty of thirst traps
because
Yeah.
that's not the official one, and he doesn't want to get in trouble. So he puts all of the thirst traps on Instagram.
I don't have the verified. I don't have that little check mark. So it is me, but yeah.
Well, you don't know it's really him because it doesn't say official.
I will say this. I do message back. So
Somebody messages back.
it's not my people. I'll tell you that. It's not my people. It's me. So
I was helping him craft an Instagram earlier in the day.
that's true. That's true.
So
thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't think he knows how to use it, to be honest, guys.
I haven't used it recently, but I know how.
What's the pound sign for?
The number symbol. What is that?
All right. And then, I forgot to mention this last time. We got a Patreon now. So, if you guys want to support, I'm working on trying to figure out some cool, like, Patreon subscriber benefits. I haven't talked to Beat about it yet, so I guess I shouldn't say what I'm thinking. So, because I don't want to lock us into something or, like, make Beat feel like she has to do something she doesn't want to do. But there are a couple of levels right now. And really, they're just like, hey, thanks for helping take care of us. It'd be really helpful if you guys want to support us, because then that means we can, watch more. We have a wider net of things we can watch. And maybe, if we ever get to the point, I'd like to go to some film festivals with Beat and watch some fun film festival movies with her. So maybe we'll get to do that at some point.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, then until next time, everyone, bon cinema.